We want to thank all you War Room members. We hope you're still playing. Maybe not for the championship, but some leagues will still pay out third or fourth place. So, of course, there's no denying fantasy football is all about the dollars and making some little extra money and having some fun. Hopefully you're doing that here this season. Chris, let's break down some more of these big matchup, big-time players, big-time fantasy players. I want to know how they're going to do this week at the quarterback position. Starting off right away, Drew Brees, a couple weeks ago, 3 picks against the Buccaneers, but that was on the road. This is now going to go back to the Superdome here. The Bucs reeling a little bit. They need a win this week to stay alive in that playoff race, to keep that 6th seed alive. But Drew Brees came up big last week. He looks like he's back after a couple sluggish weeks. What do you see from Drew Brees against the Bucs?
Well, it's tough to really knock him off his mark in successive games. He learned so much against what you do defensively against him. But this Bucs defense can be very, very effective. It's always caused them some problems, even when the Saints have had the better teams. The defensively, this Bucs team plays very well, pressure up front. I still think that Drew gets some points here for this offense, and I think Tampa's going to have to score some points in their own to win it on the road here. But it can be done. I look for Drew Brees to rebound and not have a 3-interception performance and a more productive point production for the Saints this week.
Now, on the flip side of the ball, well, not of the ball, but of the field, we got Jameis Winston going up against the Saints, and he struggled as of late. The Buccaneers, again, trying to make that playoff push, going to New Orleans, not an easy place to play, especially when you're a division rival. The Saints aren't going to roll over and say, here you go, Buccaneers, head on into the playoffs. Jameis, again, struggling a little bit as of late. What do you see from Jameis against this Saints defense?
Well, the biggest concern I see with them on offense is their inability to run the football well enough, and it's again puts Jameis in a situation where he has to take more chances. I think he'll make some big plays in this game against the Saints defense, but they want to control the football on offense. I mean, the best way for them to control the game, for Jameis to play well, is to be able to balance it out with the run game. Keep the Saints offense off the field as much as possible, because if it gets into a shootout, then obviously big advantage for the Saints, and the Saints probably win it. But if the Bucs can do a better job on the ground, control the pace of the game, then I think Jameis can have enough big plays. I think it's going to be a real advantage offense here when Jameis has the ball. But again, if they're playing from a chase position, there could be some mistakes and some turnovers by Jameis. So I think it's going to be a different type of matchup on the road, and one in which I think it's ball control for Tampa and Jameis taking some chances when he can get the safeties inside the box.
Now, Chris, if you're in the championships or you're in the playoffs, you're pushing for a number 3, or you're pushing to get that championship, you bring home the trophy, and this guy's carried you, I would strong Derek Carr. That finger is an issue. I believe I saw today that Oakland's a little bit worried about him taking. It's really struggled, but going to Minnesota and just shutting down that offense, shutting down the run game, shutting down from Derek Carr this week, would you potentially look elsewhere if this has been your starting quarterback?
Yeah, I called. They need the game. It's important, of course, but he's not the rest of the year. They're certainly doing as best as they can to give him treatment. Can they find a way to win this game? They absolutely can, but I don't know that I would be comfortable advising.
Now, Kirk Cousins, we saw the Redskins struggle really on Monday night, and now they got equipped with a little bit more confidence on offense and on defense. What do you see from Kirk Cousins still pushing for that playoff spot?
Yeah, listen, you're right about the Bears. They're playing better. This is going to be a tough game for Washington. That was a tough, but, if you're going to be a player, you're going to be as a team, I think there's a lot riding on Kirk Cousins and this Redskins team. I expect them to play well, to play him here. I think Kurt's going to have a rebound game. Of course, I'm going to freely admit that I thought he was going to Panther team that's playing much better defensively. So we're going to see maybe some of the same, but this Panther out.
Chris, I want to get back here to this Steelers-Ravens matchup that we talked about, hitting Le'Veon Bell. He gets too many touches on the ground. Ben looks to him to the check down. If Antonio Brown's not open, too many touches to sit him. But his least productive week of the year was against the Ravens. But if you're a Le'Veon Bell owner, he's sort of carried you this season. I
think that all valid points. Playing against a very good defense, a lot on the line, barring a lot of mistakes. I don't see any team pulling away in this game. Balanced looks, and certainly a lot of feeding him the football. So You had a really great option, and you just were intoxicated by the matchup. I think the player kind of Dixie points out of it, but I still would expect that he's going to be very productive for you.
Again, here, I would never sit him, but I'm looking to try to make up points other places because I don't think I'm going to get the production, ever out of the question for Le'Veon. Now, another guy who's a big-time back, but Lamar Miller, the offense is a mess. He's banged up. Tom Savage's quarterback.
How going to have to run to take some pressure off of Savage and balance out this offense, and they're just not playing if they can stay in the game and be competitive and not lose the game with mistakes early, to stay committed to the running game. Now, Cincinnati's a very dangerous team, are capable of putting banged up, not overly excited, but I expect that he's going to get some touches here. And this is a real gut check game for Houston. I expect them to respond in a positive way.
Now, if you had Melvin Gordon carrying you most of the season, I know he was out last week and he got hurt early 2 weeks ago, so you hadn't gotten much production. But if you were able to use him, get all the way to the playoffs, and you picked up his backup, Kenneth Farrow, as Melvin went out, do you think that Farrow is a good play going up against the Browns? Obviously not very productive last week, but again, you look at that Browns matchup, and it seems a little bit juicy anytime someone goes up against the Browns.
Yeah, I know their colors are still brown and orange, but it really signifies a green light when you're going up against this team. And I think that you got to look at it here. The matchup just says you got to give him a chance here. That it's maybe the last chance of the Browns to win here, but I just don't see it the way they're playing. They've got too many holes. I would certainly play him and feel that Kenneth is going to have some production here.
Maybe a guy you put in your flex position. I wouldn't call him necessarily a strong, RB1 or 2, but I would definitely agree that I think he's a good flex, and maybe an RB2, but hopefully not the lead guy you're going with. If he's the lead guy you're going with, I doubt you're playing in the championship. Now, Chris, the Bears, as we mentioned, are improving. They are still looking for their quarterback of the future. Matt Barkley has impressed a little bit, but I'm pretty sure they found their running back of the future, and that's rookie Jordan Howard. I believe he'll be a Bear for a long time to come, obviously barring injury, but he has had a tremendous season, a tremendous second half of the season. What do you see going up against this Redskins defense that we saw just get torn up by Jonathan Stewart?
Pretty big day, unless they turn the football over and the Redskins can get an early lead. I expect the Bears to stay committed to the run. Jordan Howard is the real deal, and they are not doing a good job defensively or the Redskins tackling. So I like this matchup here. I think Jordan's a really outstanding young talent.
Now, Chris, at the wide receiver position, that's where I think there's a lot of questionable matchups for a lot of big-time players here. Getting back to the Packers game we talked about earlier, from an Aaron Rodgers perspective, let's look at it from a wide receiver perspective. Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb, they're facing, again, that very good Vikings pass defense. Nelson, the only player to really produce anything the last time they faced Minnesota. What do you see from this wide receiver core? Would you say Nelson might be the only play out of the three of them?
I think that I probably would, although I'm a big fan of Devontae Adams. Just the consistency concerns me, but I think he's got big playability. In this game, to me, what I see is the potential for them to get a little bit deeper in their routes as the protection is a little bit better. Now, again, they're going up against a very good pass rush, so we'll see if that holds up. In essence, it's a little bit of a very curious to see for me, but I definitely like Nelson, but I kind of like I like Adams a little bit too. I think they both could have productive games. I'm a believer that right now that the Packers, they find a way in these type of games. I just have a feeling that they come out, they play well, and I think you're going to have multiple receivers, at least two, that have very productive days for them as they move on and advance towards the playoffs. That's my gut feeling based upon how they're playing. But I recognize it's a tough matchup for them at the line of scrimmage.
I agree with you, Chris. This Packers team is starting to scare me just from a playoff standpoint. I think that Aaron Rodgers, he's the quarterback in this league that it doesn't matter what's around him. He can make plays. He can get this team into the playoffs. And once you get into the playoffs, it's really no holds bar. You never know what can happen. And I think the Packers are on that right route to get there. Now, Chris, Julio Jones, do you have a status update? I believe he's back at practice. I believe he'll go this week against Carolina. If he does go...
Yes, it looks like he's... Yeah.
He's going to go?
It looks like he's going to, at least he's on pace right now. I would say it's better than 50-50 that he goes unless there's a setback. I expect him to go this week. They obviously need him. It's such a big game, and he is, even if he's less than 100%, what he can do in terms of dictating defenses. They can win without him, but, boy, it really helps things. And this is a team that's so dependent on their offense and big plays. I'm guessing right now it looks like he's probably going to be a go.
And normally we've said if a guy's coming off an injury, he's been out a couple weeks, maybe give him a week to get back, see what he's doing. But we can't do that here. This is it. So do we roll with Julio and hope he's back, and even at 50, 60, 70% he can produce enough? Or is it too much of a risky play? You got to consider what else you have.
I think you got to consider what else you have. I just don't know how effective he's going to be, and it's not so much decoy, but is he going to be as explosive? He'll have an impact into their success or lack thereof, but in terms of fantasy, I think you really need to look at what are your other options. And listen, understand that you got to compare a less than 100% Julio Jones. Monitor what we tell you on the website and the notebook as to his availability Friday and Saturday. Really Friday, because you want to make your decision by Friday afternoon, Friday night, and then go with it there. I think if you got some other options, you need to consider it, though.
Now, another guy where if you have other options, I would strongly be considering it. That's my opinion because, again, you talked about his quarterback, Derek Carr, being banged up. I'm talking about Amari Cooper. He's had a very disappointing second half of the season. I think if you asked him, he would admit that. Again, Carr banged up with that finger issue. Do you have confidence issues in Amari Cooper this week?
I do have confidence in Amari Cooper. I absolutely am concerned about the Carr's ability, but I still think that they're going to go to him and they're going to have some back shoulder throws to him. I think Amari will make plays. I'd be more concerned if, like I said, with Julio, because you don't know with 100% certainty he's going to play and how effective. With Amari at this point, we know he's going to be healthy, and I think the production is not going to be – I'm not as encouraged if you had a healthy Derek Carr, but – I still think there's an opportunity. They're going to need him, and I think that the matchups are going to be favorable. I would be encouraged enough to play him. Again, you got a better option. You better be much better, and you better be very confident before I think you pull out Amari Cooper.
Chris, Tyreek Hill had his coming out party 4 weeks ago when he faced Denver. He put up over 30 points in fantasy and PPR leagues, probably 20 to 25 points in a standard league, and ever since then, he has just shown his electric speed, his playmaking ability. We saw it again against the Titans. Do you think he can repeat that performance against the Broncos, who are really, really struggling, not necessarily defensively, but offensively, and as we've talked about all season long, offense and defense go together hand in hand. If your offense can't move the ball or control the ball, your defense is out on the field a little bit longer. They get tired. They give up big plays. Could you see that happening with Tyreek Hill on the field?
Absolutely, I could. I think he is, such a factor in their misdirection game, the jet sweeps that they run. It's very difficult, and you just nailed it on the head with Denver. Defensively, they're getting worn down because they are losing the line of scrimmage offensively, and that's putting the defense on the field a great deal. Unless Denver can find a way to run the football and control the pace a little bit more, I think you give Tyreek Hill and this Chiefs offense enough chances. I think they'll make enough big plays to probably win this and win it with some, couple of big play options for Hill. So I like the way this Kansas City team matches up with Denver. I know it was a close game in Mile High that Kansas City won. I expect it to be relatively close. I expect some fight out of Denver. I really do. I expect a better effort by the offense, but I just don't know if they've got enough up front on the offensive line to control the game to prevent their defense from getting worn down. So I like Tyreek Hill. I think he's a big-time playmaker, and I'd play him here.
Chris, DeAndre Hopkins is, man, he's had a rough year. He's just sort of had a rough career with, I couldn't count how many quarterbacks he's had to throw him the ball. And he's got a new one this week in Tom Savage, who took over last week and led the Texans back in that game against the Jaguars. So is Tom Savage going to help DeAndre Hopkins, who, again, also having a down year from a fantasy standpoint? Or do you think Hopkins' tough season continues?
Well, it can't hurt. I mean, right now, when they pulled out Brock Osweiler